Who's
It's I talked about this on Twitter the other day. This is an ownership issue.
Yes.
This is a big ownership issue because we saw the same thing happen in Brooklyn where the owner tries to bite off more than they can chew. They get too involved and they don't know what the fuck they're doing and shit hits the fan. Right? The Nets don't even have a president of basketball operations. That's how bad things are. But essentially, Joe Tsai was Matt Ishbia's sponsor to become an NBA owner. So he obviously learned through the ropes through Joe Tsai, which is basically like the blind leading the blind. So essentially, and whenever an owner becomes an owner, right, whenever they take over the team, I think it's called a governor in NBA's terms, it's a big splash. And literally a week after that, KD wound up getting traded to the Phoenix Suns. We know all of this. And they did well for the situation they were in, right? They cruised past the Clippers, albeit Kawhi was injured, but still they got past the Clippers. And then obviously you fall to the Denver Nuggets. Now you managed to get more wins against the Nuggets than anyone else did in the playoffs, but at the end of the day, you still got bitched at home again. You were down 30 at halftime for the second year in a row in an elimination game. And then that's where you decide that you need to get depth from there because it's clear that Denver set the bar. You need to try and match the bar. And instead, you give up all your assets or whatever assets you had left to go get Bradley Beal, a guy that has not played meaningful basketball in at least 4 or 5 years, who has a no-trade clause. So that's probably one of the biggest situations, stickiest situations you can get into with any player is a no-trade clause. And it's just a redundant position. Him and Booker do the same thing.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you lose your facilitator of CP3, and you're seeing without a facilitator how bad Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson are playing in Brooklyn without CP3. The Ayton for Nurkic is an upgrade in my opinion. I think Nurkic, this series he's been playing his ass off.
Yeah.
I credit him for that because I doubted him, but he's been good. He's been durable. And then you saw last night in garbage time as the game was ending, Matt Ishbia is just sitting there on the sideline looking like, what did I just do?
Yeah.
Because essentially that's what happens.
Yeah.
A completely involved hands-on owner is bad. Someone like Steve Ballmer or Mark Cuban is good because they know where the line is. They'll hire people and trust those people that know what they're doing. Whereas Joe Tsai, Matt Ishbia will either just do it themselves or they'll either hire someone unqualified and they'll just be on their case the entire time. And eventually Frank Vogel's going to be the scapegoat of that because Ishbia knows he fucked up.
Unfortunate. I feel like this series shows us two very important things, and I want to hear you guys' thoughts on both of these. And one is that you need a point guard, a half decent point guard, to be able to contend for a championship. That's one. And number two, like there's no more positionless basketball. Like no more. We need a point guard. And then number two, I think the series proves that you cannot just throw stars together and expect things to work out. That's number two. What do we think about these?
Well, you go first.
Yeah, I think that there's no ball handling point guard. Beal's not a point guard. Neither is Grayson Allen. D-Book's and the same thing with them. I think after KD, they should have just stopped there and just filled in positions of need instead of taking on Beal and his contract and everything else. I understand, yes, it's Bradley Beal, but like you said, putting stars all together does not work. And the good amount of time it does work for some teams, but with this, I think you have 3 completely different players that all want the ball in their hand at a certain time in the game. Like, of course, KD's going to be the one taking the last shot in the game. D-Book's going to be possibly doing that if KD's not there. Beal is just going to be there as a third guy. And he knew that, but Beal this year took a really far step back in his performances. I mean, he was injured.
Yeah,
but
that's the only reason why.
Yeah, but
really
just when he came back, I don't think we weren't seeing him like he was in Washington, of course, being the third behind Book and Durant. But yeah, I don't know. It's going back to the ownership thing. Once they took over the new ownership group, they don't have a GM, do they? The Suns?
Yeah, they do.
Who's
James
their
Jones.
GM? James Jones. Yeah, so Jones is there, but there's only so much he can do from the owners coming in, and they're probably saying, go get this. He's going to get it done for them.
Mm-hmm.
He can't say no to his boss. That's kind of how it works.
Right. Otherwise, you're gone.
You're gone. Exactly. So
Essentially.
he may get a lot of backlash for this.
Don't think you will.
No.
You think the backlash is going to go to the owners?
Think of it. You know who Bobby Webster is?
No.
Exactly. He's the Raptors general manager. He does all the moves. It's not Masai Ujiri. No one thinks of James Jones, just like no one thinks of Elton Brand. They all think Daryl Morey.
Okay.
So James Jones is fine. I don't think he has any job security issues like a Frank Vogel would.
Okay.
He's not really the man front line. You know what I mean?
So you think it's the ownership?
It's the ownership.
It's the ownership. They're going to scapegoat it through the coach.
Of course.
That's what's going to happen. Unless, we'll see if any movement happens in the offseason. But I agree with you, Gio, exactly. Even look last year, right? The Nuggets were completely dominant. Jokic was just otherworldly, but you need steady point guard play.
Yes.
Without Jamal Murray, they are not a championship team. That's no discredit to Jokic. He's the best player in the fucking world. It's just you need a point guard. Even if he plays point guard, you still need someone else.
Yeah, and I don't think it was Chris Paul for them either. They needed someone that was.
No,
I think it could have.
You think it could have been Chris Paul?
Here's the thing. Chris Paul worked. It's just last year he got hurt in Denver
All right.
series.
That's
And obviously,
something-
I still think they were doomed regardless because Denver was just better.
Yeah.
But maybe
They need a floor general.
exactly. You need someone that's going to distribute the ball, someone that can play make.
Control the offense because it just looks stagnant and ugly and ISO, and it just doesn't work.
There's ISO ball is just a recipe for disaster, and it's bad. If you have an ISO heavy system, you're just going to have guys sitting in the corner.
Literally.
You're not going to have guys that play with Jokic and they play with Şengün and Sabonis. They're engaged. They're making timely cuts. I think there was a clip in the finals last year. I think my MPJ was cutting to the basket before Jokic even got the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
And same thing. I think Cam Whitmore was going up for an alley-oop. Şengün didn't even have the ball yet either. So, I mean, you need a healthy system.
Yeah.
So we're in an era of positionless basketball.
Yeah.
But you need guys that know their roles.
Absolutely. It's key.
And that's what's important. There needs to be sacrifice. And I think with Phoenix, everyone's trying to make sacrifices. They're just not good enough.
Yeah.
Quite simply that.
point.
No. Exactly.
I think the last question before we move on to the next series, if they lose in the second round, is this season a failure?
If they lose to the Clippers or the Mavs,
Correct.
is this season a failure?
I wouldn't.
I would say yes. They're the 1 seed.
Yeah.
You got high expectations.
I
for being
think
a 1
if
seed, even though it's tight.
if they're getting eliminated in the conference finals, no, it's not a failure
Okay.
because that top 3 is either way. One of those teams is going through.
Well, if they lose to the conference finals, you're
Nuggets or Tims.
most likely, yes. Obviously, it's not. Both of them have not
If-
clinched yet.
If they lose to the Clippers with Kawhi's injury and problem, that's I think a failure. With the Mavs, if the Mavs get hot at the right time, I don't know.
It depends on the series.
That's a question.
I think
It's a
if it's a sweep, then yes.
Oh,
yes,
of course.
100%.
But I'm just trying to think of just the expectations.
Right.
Like, we all kind of knew they'd be a playoff team. I thought they'd kind of be not number 1. I thought they were going to be maybe 3.
Yeah.
But, you got the youngest team, one of the youngest teams, and I think the second youngest. And you grab the 1 seed in a stacked West. It's really hard. They're going to go out with their heads held high.
I think
Oh,
so
of
too.
course.
As long as you
I
get
think they
a win.
overachieved already.
Exactly.
Oh, they did.
So,
I think it's just up from. We just got to see what happens. I said before, we'll see after the series if it's a sweep and then who they're gonna play, and we'll analyze what can happen with them and the other teams as well. If it's Clippers, Kawhi, of course, Mavs, and then we go from there.
Yeah.
what was
I don't
their
know.
seed last year?
They were the 10 seed, I believe,
So
and
that's huge.
they won their first playing game, and then they lost the second one.
Yeah. So
Okay.
they already
To
overachieved in
Minnesota.
my book.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So,
I think.
yeah, definitely a good rebound. So we'll see what happens with them later on in the series. So, and later on in the playoffs, we'll see what they do. They should be able to sweep, though, tomorrow or Tuesday, whenever they play.